The K&N Blackhawk intake that we have here today will be a premium option for the 2019 and newer 5.3 Silverado owners who are looking for a no tune required intake that will deliver a very stealthy all-black appearance and want to go with a very trusted name like K&N. Now the Blackhawk will come with everything needed for the install, including your dry synthetic filter, along with the included heat shield, all for the mid to high $400 price point. Installation is not going to require any permanent modification here, gang, so figure a rather simple 1 out of 3 wrenches on the old difficulty meter, maybe an hour or so to complete from start to finish, as we'll show you later in the video. So I would say K&N is one of those household names in the automotive aftermarket and one that's been doing their thing for a very, very long time. Now the Blackhawk that we have here has been a very popular option for different generations in the past and is now available for the 2019 and newer 5.3s. Now as the name implies, guys, the Blackhawk is all about blacking out or murdering out, I would say 100% of the intake here in this case, including your synthetic filter and even smaller things such as the clamps, which, yes, have been given the black treatment as well. But breaking things down even further, you'll find the Blackhawk, like K&N's other intake offerings for the 5.3, will feature that open element or open airbox design, which is going to have its pros and its cons. Now the pros here will be the dramatic increase in noise coming from under the hood under hard acceleration, along with a much cooler look compared to a more traditional sealed enclosure. Now the drawback to this style of airbox design is that you're not really fully isolating the filter here from any possible hot engine bay air from entering the filter, and that's where a sealed enclosure will get the thumbs up. So what does this all mean when we're talking power, right? Well, the reality is, guys, a no tune required intake like the K&N here typically on average is going to yield high single digit, low double digit gains at the tire without the use of any tuning, which this intake again does not require. Now that's not to say there aren't any other benefits, including the small bump in power. You're also receiving that bump in sound that we talked about earlier thanks to the open element box. You're also looking forward to things like a little bit more throttle response, which is something a lot of Silverado owners often point out in the customer review section. Check those out as well. You'll notice some pros and some cons that owners talk about, along with the much cooler look underneath the hood with this installed. Now, outside of the benefits such as the added power, sound, and cooler appearance, the Blackhawk will also deliver some really nice components, including your black aluminum intake tube that we mentioned earlier. Now, this intake is a little unique because unlike traditional oiled cotton gauze filters that K&N really built their brand on over the years, the Blackhawk here is going to utilize a dry synthetic material instead. So yes, it's still washable, it is still reusable, but it's kind of a bonus because you're not going to have to re-oil the filter after cleaning, which again, some owners might see as a benefit because that extra step does just add some extra maintenance. Now, in regards to cleaning the filter itself here, K&N states that the filter can go up to 100,000 miles before it needs an actual deep cleaning, and that's going to greatly depend on your area, your usage, etc. If you're running your truck in the sand, the desert every day, obviously that dust will build up over time, but most daily drivers out there, you can go a pretty long way before actually needing to clean this thing. Last but not least, guys, we did mention everything else is included with this kit to get it installed on your 5.3 at home, and everything again is completely blacked out. You're looking at your couplers here, the clamps again in black, which is very cool. Airbox, there is some weather stripping included with this kit to go on top of this bad boy, and that's actually going to help seal to the bottom side of your hood to help keep out all of that hot engine bay air as much as possible anyway with this style airbox design. Now, as promised earlier, guys, let's shift gears, let's get into the install. And honestly, guys, intakes on any vehicle, including the new 5.3, going to be pretty straightforward stuff. So without further ado, feel free to check out our detailed walkthrough and tool breakdown now.
The tools you'll need for this installation include ratchets. I'll be using 3/8 and 1/4 inch drives, a flathead screwdriver, a trim removal tool, long and short extensions, 10 and 8mm sockets, T20 and T15 Torx sockets, and 3mm and 4mm hex sockets. How's it going, everybody? Today we have a K&N cold air intake to put into this 19 to current Silverado. We've previously uninstalled the factory intake on this truck, so we're going to show you that clip now. Then I'll be back to walk you through the install.
Getting started, we need to obviously pop our hood here on our Silverado. And then first step is to unplug your mass airflow sensor. You're gonna wanna pull back on this red clip and then release the plug. So again, slide the red portion back. At that point, you can release the clip. Next up, we're gonna work on removing the intake tube portion of the factory intake. Getting started, we can loosen up our clamp here at the airbox connection. Either use a flathead screwdriver for this or an 8mm socket. Next up, we're going to loosen up the clamp here at the throttle body connection, again using a flathead screwdriver or an 8mm socket. With our two clamps loosened up, we're about ready to pull out the intake tube portion, but before we do, we have to go ahead and remove our PCV hose on the back here, push in on the gray clip, and pull back. At this point now, we can go ahead and remove our intake tube from the engine bay, releasing it from the throttle body, and then from the airbox. Next up, we need to remove the upper radiator valance here. There are 10 plastic clips holding this in place, so grab a trim removal tool, flathead screwdriver, whatever you have laying around. You're gonna wanna pop the top off this clip and then remove the clip itself. Now before we go ahead and remove our upper radiator valance, we do need to remove the hood latch release. To do so, you need a T15 Torx tool. With that removed, you can slide it off. With the latch out of the way, now you can remove your valance. The reason you removed your upper radiator valance is to gain access to this clip right here. Basically, you need to pop this guy out. With that clip removed, that'll allow you to pull back the snorkel just enough to get out of that stock airbox. Now we can go ahead and remove this 10mm nut down here, and that will be our first step in removing our stock airbox. Next up, we need to remove this wiring harness and clip from the airbox itself. It's actually attached to a bracket there. To do so, you could either use a small pick tool, flathead screwdriver to release the clip back here and then pull up. At this point, our stock airbox is ready to come out. A couple little tips here. You're gonna wanna push this out of the way, just kind of secure it underneath one of your hoses. And then also, there are two rubber grommets on the back side of the airbox. You don't wanna lose those.
Now that we have our factory air intake out of our truck, there's a little bit of prep work we have to do before we can put our K&N intake into the truck. First, we're going to take out the mass airflow sensor from our factory air intake box using a T20 Torx socket. You may need a ratchet as well. Once we have that out, we're going to flip the factory air intake box around because there's a couple of grommets that we want to remove that we're going to reuse in our K&N intake. Okay, so this is our factory intake box and our mass airflow sensor is right here. There's two T20 Torx screws holding it in. So we're going to take our T20 Torx socket, and I can actually remove these by hand. Now this is a fragile electronic component, so these screws shouldn't be in too tight. And when we go to reinstall it in our K&N, we're gonna make sure that we're gonna be careful installing it there as well. So with those screws removed, the mass airflow sensor slides right out. And I just wanna make a note that make sure that this O-ring here is in place because we are gonna reuse it to seal it into our K&N. With that removed, there are actually 3 grommets we need to take out that we're gonna reuse. This one right here being one. And that just pulls out. And then the 2 on the back side, and these simply pull off as well. Now that that's all taken care of, we can remove our factory box, get it out of the way. Now we have our K&N intake tube ready for the mass airflow install. We're going to use the provided hardware and a 3mm hex head socket. All right, so we got our K&N intake tube and our mass airflow sensor. Simply slides right in. Make sure it is in this orientation so that your holes line up with the threads on the intake tube. Once you have that in place, use the provided hardware. And I would just put the screws in hand tight. As I said before, this is a pretty fragile piece of electronic equipment. So just make sure you're careful. Use factory specs. And you really don't even need that much tension. Just about like 1/8 of a turn will do. Next, we're going to take the provided 90-degree quick connect and install it into the K&N intake tube. So you see right here, there is a threaded bung. And our quick connect threads into there. Now this is a plastic quick connect. And anytime you're threading plastic into metal, you want to be very cautious. And you might have to thread it in and out a couple times. So the last thing you want to do is snap this, because then you're going to have to order a new one. So just make sure you're going slow, taking your time. Might take a little bit. You can always take it all the way out, check your threads, clean it out. Start again. All right, so once you have it in tight, and you can actually look on the inside of the intake tube. So once the quick connect is at least flush with the intake tube, you want to make sure that this is oriented in the right direction. So when it goes in the truck, it's going to be oriented like this. And you want to make sure that your quick connect is in this general direction. All right, moving on to our K&N heat shield. Let's install the edge trim. And it's going to go the whole way around the perimeter of this box. It makes it a little bit easier if you kind of angle it backwards, like I'm doing here. The corners are a little tricky, but you should be able to maneuver around, no problem. I'm going to start this edge first and come back to the corner. Again, for this corner here, I'm going to start this edge first and then kind of come back to the corner. So when you're doing these tighter spots, it's good just to leave a little slack. As you can see, I started this edge first and then came back here with the slack that I had. and worked it on. Right, now we're going to move on to the intake adapter. Next, we're going to install the supplied grommet mount. And to secure that, we're going to use the supplied hardware, which is an M6 by 12 millimeter hex head bolt with locking washer and flat washer. And it's a 10 millimeter bolt head, so I'm using my 10 millimeter wrench just to tighten that down. Now we can spin our heat shield around. And we're going to install our other grommet here. And make sure that you have the flat side, I would say, down. So it's in this orientation when you put it in. Next, I'm going to install the supplied wire bracket. And to install this, you need an M6 hex head bolt with a flat washer, which goes in through the bracket hole, through the heat shield, and then on the other side, you want to put another flat washer. And secure that with an M6 nylock nut. All right, and to tighten that down, we're going to use a 10 millimeter wrench and a 10 millimeter socket and ratchet. And we're not going to tighten this down all the way yet. Just going to snug it so that we can adjust it as needed. Let's see, that's a little too tight. Let me just loosen it a little bit. There we go. So that way we can position it to where our wire is going to be. And don't forget to slide your grommet onto your grommet mount. Next, we're going to install the hump hose onto the filter adapter. So we got to put the clamp on first. So make sure you grab the appropriate size clamp. And you can either slide it onto the adapter or slide it onto the hump hose first, whichever is easier for you. Then I'm going to position the clamp in this orientation just to make it a little bit easier to get to when it is in the car. And to snug the clamp down, I'm using an 8 millimeter socket with an extension. All right, now let's assemble the vent hose, which is provided in the kit with the 2 provided quick connects. And we're just going to slide one into each end of our hose. And that's going to conclude our table pre-assembly. Now that our pre-assembly is all done, we can start putting our K&N intake into our truck. Let's grab our K&N heat shield and slide it into place where our factory air box was. It might help out to squeeze the heat shield a bit to fit around the hoses, and just make sure your hoses are out of the way. And then make sure your grommets go into place in the factory locations. So if your grommet washer got left behind during uninstall, just make sure that that goes into the grommet, and then that your grommet is in the proper location right here over the stud. And then grab your 10 mil nut from factory, thread that on by hand, and then with a 10 millimeter socket and extension, just go ahead and tighten that down. Next, let's slide the fresh air scoop back into place. And it just slides right through the hole in the heat shield like that. With our fresh air scoop in place, we're gonna reuse the factory plastic retainer and secure this in place. Okay, since we're right here, let's go ahead and connect the wiring bulk harness onto the bracket that we installed onto the heat shield. And it just slides right on to said bracket. Now we're installing the rubber coupling onto the throttle body. There is two provided in the kit, one for the 5.3, which we have, and one for the 6.2. The one we're using for our 5.3 looks like this. As you can see, it's a little smaller in diameter on the throttle body side. All right, also make sure you have the appropriate clamp. And then once your coupler is seated in place, take an 8mm socket and ratchet and snug it down. So if you didn't do it during uninstall, we do have to remove the factory vent tube. To do so, just have to press in the gray clip here. I know it's kind of hard to see on camera, but I'll show you right here. And it pulls up easily. Once that is removed, we're going to replace it with the one we put together from the K&N kit. And just as a kind of tech tip, I do like to leave these easily accessible. So I will position it so it's towards the outside when I slip it on. All right, it's time for the intake tube. First, let's put on our clamps on our rubber couplers. And I find it easiest to slide the MAF end in first. That is the mass airflow sensor. And then the heat shield does have a little play to it, so you can push on it in order to finesse the throttle body end in. Once that's in a good location, we're going to take our 8mm socket and tighten our clamps down. And it's a good idea to feel around the clamp to make sure that it is square on the coupler and pipe so that it can be tightened properly. Just a little snug will do. Let's reconnect our vent tube and our MAF sensor connector. And make sure you push the safety pin back into place so the connector doesn't come loose. All right, now for the moment we all been waiting for. Time to install the filter. Make sure that you have the supplied clamp on the filter, then slide the filter onto the filter adapter. And with your 8mm socket and ratchet, snug it down. Make sure it is fully seated so that it doesn't come off after you snug it down. And just a slight snug will do. No need to over tighten. Let's slide the radiator valance back into place. Make sure that this piece lines up with your fresh air scoop, and re-secure it with the factory clips. Okay, last but not least, let's reinstall our hood release handle. And just a little tip for you guys, Anytime you can put factory hardware back into its place while you're working, it's a good way just to keep it organized so you don't lose anything, or at least less likely to. Slide that into place. Thread in the hardware. And then take your T15 Torx socket and tighten it down. That's going to wrap up this review and install of the K&N Blackhawk cold air intake for the 19 and newer Silverado. Thanks for watching, and for all things Silverado, keep it right here at AmericanTrucks.com.